Good morning. I'm Tennie McCarty. I'm founder and one of the owners. My youngest daughter, Christy, and I together own Shades of Hope Treatment Center. It's an all-addiction treatment center in Buffalo Gap, Texas. And I have been doing Zoom meetings a couple of months talking about different types of addictions. There's the addiction, substance abuse, drugs, alcohol, food in the way of eating disorders, there's nicotine, there is, the substance, and then there's process addictions. And, I absolutely believe in good therapy, and some people do need treatment to go into either short-term programs or long-term programs, or they need to see a therapist once a week. Therapy works. But what works along with it is the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. The 12 steps were developed in 1936 by the first recovering couple of people in Alcoholics Anonymous. They were actually written by Bill W., who was a chronic alcoholic, and he wrote the 12 steps. They were published the first time in 1936. And there was an author, a journalist, Jack Alexander, that wrote an article that went into the Post magazine talking about the 12 steps. And so it caught on. People wanted the 12 steps. They said, oh, that's a wonderful way to live. And they wanted it put in the schools and in businesses and all. And then what Bill W. decided and what he realized, that the 12 steps will work for any problem, any situation, if we work them. But it's mainly for those not necessarily who need the 12-step process. It's for those who want it. And so if you do have a problem, if you want to learn a real solution of how to solve problems, the 12 steps can work with any problem, regardless of what it is. It would be great to be installed in our government, but those people wouldn't want it because they think they have all the answers. So it's not for people who need it, it's for those who want it. So I want to briefly give you a thumbnail sketch. I could do hours of lectures on the 12 steps, but I want to give you a little introduction for those that have never heard them. I know people that don't understand Alcoholics Anonymous or the 12 steps, can kind of joke about them or make fun of them or whatever, but I will tell you, they're life-changing for people. And if they are worked, you work them the first time, and then they become a living, working part of the mind and body. So I just want to briefly give you a thumbnail sketch. And so we'll start with step 1. There are 12 steps, and the first step is we were admitted that we were powerless. They were originally written, we were powerless over alcohol. In the second part of that step, and our lives have become unmanageable. You can insert in there anything. We were, we admitted we were powerless over what's happening in our nation. We're powerless over racism. We're powerless over the pandemic, any problem. And our lives have become unmanageable because of it. That's the problem. Figure out I'm powerless over my finances. And my life has become unmanageable because of my finances. I'm powerless over my relationship. I'm powerless over food. Whatever the problem is, we must figure out what the problem is, or we'll never find a solution. And the solution is going to be as powerful as the knowledge of the problem. So you must spend time on figuring out what is the problem here if you really want a solution. So in the 12 steps, what we say, or Bill wrote, that the solution is a spiritual solution. This is a complicated, this is a very simple program for complicated people. We say addictions as it's all about self-centeredness. And we say that the solution is spiritual. So figure out what the problem is, and then the solution is step 2, came to believe that a power greater than myself, could restore us to sanity. Greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. So that sanity piece bothers some people, and it doesn't mean that we're insane in every area. Some people are insane in every area of their life, but it just means that we have a sliver missing. That, if we do have any addiction, like I'm recovering from an eating disorder. I was a severe compulsive overeater and ate myself up to 287 pounds, and then found bulimia and almost died from bulimia. So there was a sliver. It's like it's not a good analogy for a compulsive overeater, but see it as a pie chart. And there was a sliver in my psyche, in my brain, that was missing. I have a brain chemistry that is an addict brain chemistry, that when something feels good, it makes me feel better. I want more of it. I get addicted to more. So, so seeking the aid of a power greater than ourselves will help us to be restored to sanity in that area. Whether it's mental illness, whether it's addiction, you choose the problem, and God can and will, when sought, can help. He can help, in any or she, whatever your God concept is, He can help us with any problem that we're willing to surrender to Him. So we have the problem, step 1, solution, step 2, and step 3. See, no recovery has taken place yet, because you haven't made a decision if you want to go toward recovery. Step 3 is made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God, is we understood God. And so what we want to turn over is our will and our lives, and that is our thinking and our actions. There are people who act very badly. Look at the what's going on just this last month with the protesters. Now, there's been some wonderful, calm, spiritual protesters walking the streets, asking for things to change as far as racism is concerned. And then there's been violent people who have destroyed businesses and homes and streets. And I don't believe God had any part of that. I believe God has a part of people wanting to bring about change. And when God is in the center of the changes will take place. And I'm a firm believer in this. You invite God into it, and we do the footwork, God will bless the effort. So that's step 3. You make a decision. It's so simple. Do you want to stay in the problem, or do you want to go toward recovery? Do you want change in your life? If you do, make that decision. And then the next thing we do, step 4, is made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. We've got to quit taking other people's inventory. We're in an election year, and I try not to turn my TV on very often. I do try to not keep my head in the sand, and I do try to stay up to the news as much as I can, but I'm not going to live and watch news on TV all of the time, because it is, they take each other's inventory. These candidates will get in there, and one in particular, and I'm not, this is not, absolutely is not anything political, but there is one candidate that puts everyone and everything down and calls them names, and probably both candidates do. And that is not a God way of doing business. Anyway, I want to get into politics, so I'm going to stop right now. So step 4 is you take an inventory of yourself, not of your next door neighbor. Look at your side of the sidewalk, not your wife, your husband, your kids. Look at your behavior and see what needs to be changed in you. And what you inventory is your resentments. Look at what, as resentment is like acid, and it eats out the container that holds it. And so if you're eat up with resentment, you might want to inventory that. And then your fears. We cannot live in total fear. Look at what your fear is. God gives us fear, healthy fear, to protect ourselves. You stop at the stop sign. You get out of the burning house. That's healthy fear. The paralyzing fear keeps us stuck. And so you inventory your fears, and you inventory problems in the sex area, because sex is for one reason. God gave us sex for one reason, and that was to build up the population, so the people would have more power over the earth than the animals. Now, you had a sense of humor. God knew you had to make sex enjoyable, or we never would get around to doing it. We're a lazy bunch of people, and God knew that, so He made sex pleasurable. And so no one can tell another person what their sex life needs to look at, but that's what you get to inventory. And if you have a problem in the sex area, you get to inventory that. In step 5, this is so simple: admitting to God and to ourselves and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. What are your wrongs? When you got them all, get your resentments, your fears, and the problems in the sex area listed, then you find someone, either a sponsor in a 12-step program or a therapist or a minister, and go over that list with them, honest, and see your part, not your neighbor's part or your spouse's part, your part. That's what step 5 is. And then in doing that, that person listening to you are going to see your character defects, and they will help you see what your character defects are. Where your character defects are like resentment, problems with fear. In the sex area, taken to the extreme, they can become character defects. So they're going to help you see that. And so then in step 6, we get entirely ready to have God remove those defects of character. I don't believe we can just automatically change ourselves, but I believe God can and will if we'll let Him. And so in step 7, what we do is, when we're entirely ready to give up our character defects, and sometimes we hold on to some of those character defects because we think they serve us well, but when we're ready to turn them loose, what we do is we ask God to remove all of our character defects. And if we do the footwork, He will bless the effort. For instance, one of mine was jealousy. I was so jealous, and that is like, it's such a disease in itself when you are jealous. It's an evilness. And I was so jealous of my husband. If he petted the dog before he spoke to me of an evening, I'd get mad. I was pretty sick early on. I used to hire all the secretaries because I wanted to hire the ugliest ones. Maybe they weren't even as qualified as the pretty one, but I wasn't going to have that pretty woman down there working with my husband. So I was a very sick puppy, and by the grace of God, these 12 steps and a lot of good therapy, I'm not today. So, that's why I can share the solution, because I've lived the solution today. Not perfection. I'll keep doing this the rest of my life. It is a journey. So, we just ask God to remove our shortcomings. That's in step 7. And then in step 8, we make a list of all the people we have harmed and get willing to make it amends to them. And the people we have harmed, you pull out that resentment list. And when you were a child, anything happened to you when you were a child or an adolescent, you were a victim of that. An adult, you're no longer a victim, you're a volunteer. So those resentments, you get to list everyone that's on your resentment list. You put them on your amends list because you've got to get willing to make amends to them. Because you played a part in every one of those resentments. Now, you may not ever make amends to them, you just get willing to. And that step says, may direct amends to such people wherever possible. It doesn't say when, it says wherever possible, except when to do so would harm others or them. So you don't want to go and tell someone, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry that I had an affair with your husband. That is not making amends. That is hurting someone else. You keep that amends to yourself, and you mend your behavior and quit having affairs with other people's husbands. That's how simple that is. And one of the things when I got to that amends list, I was a teenager when I married my first husband, and he deserted me and the baby. And anyway, when I did the steps the first time, many years ago, I was a young married woman to the man that I stayed married to till his death. We were married 51 years. But anyway, I was getting ready to make my amends. I had lost 100 and something pounds. I was young. I was looking good. My husband had bought, he was in the oil business. He made good money. He bought me a new Lincoln Continental. I had a white cashmere coat with a fox fur collar. And it was back in the 80s when that was popular. Late, no, it was 70s. And I was looking good. Had a diamond ring on my finger. And this was before the internet, but I found a way to find that first husband. He lived up in Oklahoma. And I wanted to go make amends to him. So this is why you don't go off by yourself making these amends. You check it out with a safe person, like a minister or a sponsor in the program. So I went to my sponsor, and she went over that. She said, now tell me why you want to go make amends to him. What is your motive? And I had to get honest. My motive was to show him what he had missed. I mean, I was looking good. I was no longer fat. I had money. And that is not a motive. I had no amends to make to that man. And what my sponsor said, you just put it on your list. And if he's ever put back in your life, that's wherever possible. You might say, make amends. I've never had to. I've never seen him again. So that's why you can't do this by yourself. You have to have some guidance in making those amends. And then step 10 is, I love step 10. It's my favorite step. It says continue to take personal inventory, and when we're wrong, promptly admitted it. We make mistakes every day, or most of us do. But if we can recognize it and promptly admit the mistake, we don't have any more amends to make. We make them immediately. And what the 10th step is every day when we have a problem, we can do the first 9 steps. It becomes a working part of the mind and body. For instance, when something happens, you get upset, you can stop, push the pause button, stop in the midst of it before you react and say something that you'll be sorry for, you rage or do something to someone of harm. You can stop in the midst of it, do a quick inventory of yourself, and not react and not use that, getting back at someone, and you won't have any amends to make. It's a spot check inventory to check yourself. Push the pause button, check yourself, and figure out what is the problem, what's the solution, invite God into the problem. And then step 11 is sought through prayer and meditation to prove our conscious contact with God as we understood God, not as granny or our church, but us, praying only for the knowledge of His will and the power to carry that out. That is so simple. Only His will and the power to carry that out, courage and power. And then after we do that, it becomes like we're living a different type of life. We're not saints. We're not working towards sainthood. Some people think they are, but we're not. We're trying to find a way to live in communion with other people and learn to love other people and invite God into tough situations. We're living in a world today that we best invite God into everything that's happened, that is happening. I think that's the only salvation that we're going to have, is if we can each individual stop in the midst of the turmoil and invite God into it. Invite God into the pandemic. Ask God to help Him, to help our country find solutions for the disease. And have people to recognize that it is an illness. There are people right here in our town. The last 4 days, we have had 54 people diagnosed with the virus. But there's people right here in the middle of West Texas who believe that it's a hoax, that there's no such thing as the virus. And my hope and my prayer is that they will have an awakening to see this is real. It is real. And what is happening, the reason that it's spreading, is people won't take responsibility. Wearing a simple mask, distancing ourselves from people, that will help, that will cut down on the virus. Please don't wear it. We don't wear masks for ourselves. We wear masks for each other. Have enough courtesy to love your fellow man enough, and woman and child, that you will wear a mask. How simple is that? I went into a restaurant. I've only been into one restaurant since the pandemic, and we went into one yesterday, and I walked in, and everyone on that food line, there was not one person that had a mask on, and I wouldn't stay there. I walked out. I'm not going to stay because they don't care enough about me as a customer to wear masks. And when we can start doing that and love our fellow man enough that we're going to help protect each other, the pandemic is going to, like our president says, it's going to go away, but it's not going to go away until we do our part. So step 12 is really what I'm talking about. It is after we have a spiritual awakening, after God shows us and we become awakened to his will or her will, whatever your God concept is, as a result of a spiritual awakening. In result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics or to others who have the same disease that we have or affliction, or to anyone on the street. We try to carry this message and to practice these principles in all our affairs. If we can start practicing the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous, you don't have to be an alcoholic to work the steps. This is a life living program. It's the way to take a problem to a resolution. And, I grew up in a household where how my folks dealt with problems. Mother drank, Dad was violent. I never learned how to take a problem to the resolution stage until I got to the 12-step program and learned these 12 steps in 1968. They have sustained me every day. Recovery is not perfection. I am certainly not perfect. We strive toward perfection and we settle for a little progress. We hope to make a little progress every day. I hope this has been helpful for you. If you want any more information, you can contact us at shadesofhope.com. I'm doing some personal phone sessions. I'm just about full. I have a few slots left if anyone's interested. And also we do an intensive, a 4-day intensive once a month that is valuable to help people get to the core symptoms of what's going on and, that's hindering them from living the life that they want to live. And also at Shades of Hope, of course, we have inpatient treatment. So if you need any help, or if you know anyone that does, pass our number or our name on to them. Shadesofhope.com. I've enjoyed visiting with you, and know with every problem there is a solution. But the solution to any problem is as powerful as the knowledge of the problem. And it is abusive to point out a problem without pointing out a solution. So we've given you a solution. Have a great day. Thanks.